The snow fell gently outside the windows of Beans and Bricks, a cozy coffee shop tucked away on a quiet street in Manhattan. The late afternoon light filtered through the frosted glass, casting a soft golden glow over the wooden tables and mismatched chairs. At table number 6, a woman sat alone, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of black coffee. She wore a simple beige sweater that looked a bit oversized, her hair tied back in a no-fuss ponytail, and her face bare, except for a subtle swipe of pale lipstick. To anyone glancing her way, she appeared ordinary, a young woman waiting for someone, perhaps a friend or a date. But she was Isabel Carson, the CEO of Carson A, one of the fastest-growing artificial intelligence companies on the East Coast. Just last month, she'd been named one of Forbes' top 10 women of power for her innovative work in machine learning algorithms that were revolutionizing industries from healthcare to finance. Her penthouse overlooked Central Park. Her wardrobe was filled with designer labels, and her days were packed with board meetings and high-stakes negotiations. Yet here she was pretending to be someone else entirely, a low-level administrative assistant scraping by in a rented apartment searching for a decent man who wouldn't bolt at the first sign of financial struggle. This was her 11th blind date in 6 months, each one a carefully orchestrated test. She'd met lawyers, architects, even a dentist, all of whom had excused themselves politely after 15 minutes upon hearing about her modest life, no car, a meager salary, and lingering student debt. None had passed. Isabel had learned the hard way that success came with suspicion. Years ago, a relationship had crumbled when her ex discovered her wealth and turned it into a weapon, accusing her of buying affection. Now she hid behind this facade to weed out the opportunists, hoping to find someone who valued her for who she was, not what she had. The bell above the door jingled, pulling her from her thoughts. A tall man stepped in, shaking snow from his shoulders. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on her. He was in his mid-30s with a rugged build that spoke of physical work. His coat was worn at the edges, his boots scuffed from use, and his hands bore the calluses of someone who labored with tools. But his smile was warm as he approached, revealing a quiet confidence. "Isabel," he asked, his voice steady and kind. She stood extending her hand. "Yes. Nathan, nice to meet you." He shook her hand firmly but gently. "The pleasure's mine. Sorry if I'm a bit late, the subway was delayed by the weather." "No problem at all," she replied, gesturing to the seat across from her. As he sat, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small tin. "I brought some cookies. I baked them myself. Hope you're not allergic to walnuts." Nathan's eyes lit up with genuine amusement. He opened the tin and inhaled the scent. "These look amazing. I can eat just about anything except charred food, and these definitely don't qualify." They ordered their drinks, black coffee for him, a refill for her, and settled into conversation. Unlike the others, Nathan didn't probe about her job or income. He didn't glance at her watch or shoes for hints of status. Instead, he asked about the movie she'd last seen that made her laugh out loud. "I'm a fan of old comedies," he said. "The kind where timing is everything." She smiled, relaxing a fraction. "I just rewatched When Harry Met Sally. It's timeless. The dialogue feels so real." He nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, real talk is underrated. Speaking of which, what's your favorite home-cooked meal, the one your mom made that you can't replicate?" Isabel paused, caught off guard by the personal turn. "Spaghetti with homemade sauce. Simple, but it always tasted like comfort." She didn't mention that her mother had passed years ago, or that she rarely cooked in her state-of-the-art kitchen anymore. 15 minutes in, she decided it was time for the test. She stirred her coffee slowly, then looked up. "Nathan, I should probably mention something up front. I borrowed about $20,000 for student loans back in college. I'm still paying it off. Sometimes I wonder if anyone would want to stick around with someone who's, well, a bit of a financial burden." Nathan set his mug down, his expression unchanging. He met her gaze directly. "A person isn't a burden just because they're working through tough times. It's about where they're headed, not where they've been stuck." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten. He leaned back slightly, his tone softening. "I know a thing or two about starting over. After my wife passed, I lived in my car with my daughter for 4 months. No one wanted to date a guy with that kind of baggage, but one day Mia, she's 7 now, asked me, "Dad, do you think Mom would be sad if you stayed lonely forever?" That hit hard, so I gave myself another shot. Isabel blinked, her carefully constructed walls cracking just a little. "You have a daughter." "Yeah, Mia. She's the light of my life. I got a friend to watch her tonight, so I could come here." "So, if someone wanted to date you, they'd have to understand you're a single dad." Nathan shook his head. "It's not about having to understand Isabel, but if they want to, that's the kind of person I'd want to keep around." For the first time in months, Isabel felt the test slipping from her control. The man across from her wasn't trying to impress her with stories of success or ambition. He was simply being honest, and in doing so, he had touched something deep within her, a vulnerability she hadn't allowed anyone to see in years. As the conversation flowed on, she found herself laughing, genuinely forgetting for a moment that this was all a charade. That evening, the snow thickened, blanketing the streets of Manhattan in a heavy white hush. Isabel left the coffee shop with a lightness in her step that she hadn't felt in months, but as she hailed a cab, the weight of her deception settled back in. The ride to her penthouse on the Upper East Side was quiet, the city lights blurring past like distant stars. She stared out the window, replaying Nathan's words in her mind. A person isn't a burden just because they're working through tough times. It had been so simple, so devoid of judgment. No one had spoken to her like that in years, not since before her rise to the top. The elevator whisked her up to the 36th floor opening into a space that screamed success. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering skyline, a sleek kitchen with automated appliances that could prepare a gourmet meal with a voice command, and a wardrobe room lined with racks of designer clothes from Milan and Paris. Isabel kicked off her Italian leather boots, ones she'd chosen specifically for their understated look, and padded barefoot across the heated marble floors. She shrugged off her coat, hanging it neatly before heading to the kitchen. Instead of summoning the robot chef for something elaborate, she toasted a slice of bread and spread it with cheese, eating it, standing at the counter like any ordinary woman winding down after a long day. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Nathan. His worn coat, the calluses on his hands, the way he'd spoken about his daughter with such quiet pride. In her world of power lunches and venture capital pitches, men like him were rare. She pulled out her phone, half expecting no follow-up, but it buzzed almost immediately. A message from an unknown number. "Hey, Isabel, this is Nathan. You left your red scarf at the shop. I grabbed it for you. Next time we meet, I'll return it. And I owe you one of Mia's jokes. She's got 1,000,000. Isabel smiled, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She saved his number and typed back, "Thanks, Nathan. Glad you made it home safe." "Today wasn't as awkward as I thought it might be." His reply came quickly. "Better than expected. You didn't mind the faint smell of motor oil on me. That's already a win." She laughed out loud, a genuine sound that echoed in the empty penthouse. They chatted for a while, light banter about the snow, her favorite books, his disastrous attempts at baking. It felt effortless, unforced. No mentions of stock options or networking events, just two people connecting. As the conversation wound down, Isabel opened her Instagram. Notifications flooded in messages from verified accounts, tech executives, influencers, even a celebrity entrepreneur she'd met at a gala. "Loved your Forbes feature, let's grab drinks," one read. She scrolled past them without interest, her mind still on Nathan's easy humor. Before bed, she stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, the city lights twinkling behind her reflection. At 33, she looked every bit the powerhouse sharp features, confident posture. But tonight, she saw the cracks, the loneliness that success hadn't filled. Flashbacks flickered through her mind, late nights building Carson AI from a garage startup, the thrill of her first big funding round the magazine covers celebrating her as a trailblazer. Yet every relationship had soured when her wealth came into play. One ex had accused her of using money to control him. Another had proposed suspiciously soon after learning her net worth. That's why she'd started these tests, hiding her identity to find authenticity. But with Nathan, the facade felt heavier than ever. "What if he finds out?" she whispered to her reflection. "Would he forgive the lie or see me as just another manipulative executive?" She climbed into bed, the silk sheets cool against her skin. Her phone buzzed one last time. "Nathan, one more thing. Mia told me a joke today. Why did the Scarecrow win an award because he was outstanding in his field, kid humor, but it made me think of you. Good night, Isabel. Tears welled up unexpectedly, spilling over as she clutched the phone. It wasn't sadness, exactly. It was the realization that her heart was opening, vulnerable and real, for the first time in too long. She wanted to tell him everything, to drop the act and see if he would stay. But fear held her back. For now, she simply replied, "Good one. Night, Nathan." As sleep finally came, she dreamed of a life without tests where trust wasn't something to earn, but something to give. The Saturday afternoon sun filtered through the bare branches of the trees in a small park on the western outskirts of New York City, casting long shadows across the frost-kissed grass. Isabel had spent the morning pacing her penthouse, staring at Nathan's latest message. "If you're free, Mia and I are at the park pushing swings. No pressure, just fresh air." Her thumb hovered over the reply button for what felt like hours. This was crossing a line. Dating a man while hiding her identity was one thing, but involving a child when everything about her was a fabrication, it felt reckless, dangerous even. Yet the pull was undeniable. She typed back, "I'll be there, bringing cookies." She arrived with a paper bag in hand, spotting them from afar. Mia was on a swing, her legs pumping energetically, her hair tied in two pigtails that bounced with each motion. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold wind, and she laughed as Nathan gave her a gentle push. He looked up as Isabel approached his face, breaking into that warm smile that had started to haunt her thoughts. "Isabel," Mia called out, spotting her first. She dragged her feet to slow the swing, hopping off with the boundless energy of a 7-year-old. "Is that you? The one who makes Dad smile a lot?" Nathan cleared his throat, a hint of embarrassment coloring his cheeks. "Mia Manners." The girl tilted her head unfazed. "I was just asking." Isabel knelt down to Mia's level, offering a genuine smile despite the knot in her stomach. "I don't mean to make him smile too much, but I do make cookies. Want one?" Mia's eyes widened at the bag. "Do they have chocolate, but not too much? I don't like super sweet." "Just a few chips," Isabel said, handing her one. "I don't like too sweet either." Mia took a bite, nodding approvingly. "You're like me, then." The simple words hit Isabel harder than expected. They walked to a nearby bench, Mia munching contentedly while Nathan hung back a few steps, giving them space. Isabel felt exposed, like the park's open air was stripping away her carefully built layers. As they sat on the wooden bench, Mia looked up curiously. "What do you do, Isabel, for work?" Isabel's heart skipped. She'd rehearsed answers for adults' vague tales of office drudgery, but not for a child's direct gaze. "I work in an office. Lots of paperwork. It can be tiring." Mia nodded sagely, as if she understood perfectly. "Yeah, tiring. My mom used to get tired, too." The air grew still. Isabel glanced at Nathan, who was watching from a distance, his expression softening. "But she still read me stories every night." Mia continued, her voice matter of fact. "Even when she was really hurting." Nathan stepped closer, then his hand gently on Mia's shoulder. "Okay, kiddo. Let's not overwhelm Isabel." Mia shrugged. "I'm not sad anymore. Dad stayed." The words hung there, simple and profound. Isabel felt a lump in her throat, the weight of her own secrets pressing down. No test could measure the kind of love that kept someone going after loss like that. The drive back was quiet at first. Mia dozed in the back seat, her head lolling against the window. Nathan gripped the wheel, glancing at Isabel occasionally. Finally he spoke. "Isabel, I need to ask something, not to pry. But," she prompted, her pulse quickening, "you're different from anyone I've met." He kept his eyes on the road. "You don't worry about money like you say you do. You don't ask about my job or how I make ends meet. But you also don't seem like someone scraping by." Isabel stared out at the passing buildings, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. A red light ahead cast a crimson glow through the windshield like a warning she couldn't ignore. "I've been lied to before," Nathan continued softly. "Not about money, about who people really are. If there's something important you're not saying." He trailed off as the light turned green. "I just need to know before Mia gets too attached." Isabel didn't respond immediately. The silence stretched until they reached her supposed neighborhood, a modest area far from her actual home. As she got out, she managed a weak smile. "I'll think about it." That night, she didn't go straight to her penthouse. Instead, she parked her car on a quiet side street, watching families through lit windows. Dinners being shared, arguments resolved, lives intertwined. Her phone buzzed. "Nathan, no rush to answer, just know I don't need perfect. I need real." The message broke something in her. Tears came unbidden as she rested her forehead on the steering wheel. She wasn't afraid of losing her empire anymore. She was terrified of losing them, the man who saw burdens as journeys and the girl who spoke of loss with such quiet strength. For the first time, Isabel knew she had to come clean no matter the cost. 3 days after the park afternoon, Isabel's phone lay silent on her kitchen counter, a graveyard of unsent drafts. She hadn't replied to Nathan's messages. Simple check-ins like, "Hope you're okay," and "Mia asked about you." Work had been abandoned too, no board meetings, no podcasts, no appearances at the tech conference in Midtown. Her team assumed she was on a spontaneous retreat. In reality, she was unraveling in the solitude of her penthouse, pacing the expansive living room with its panoramic views that now felt mocking. She typed confession after confession, explanations about her fears, apologies for the deception. Each one was deleted the words, "feeling inadequate." How do you admit to building a relationship on a lie without shattering it? Finally, sitting in the dim light of her kitchen, she sent the simplest truth. "My real name is Isabel Carson." The message delivered. Then, seen. No response. Isabel stared at the screen for 2 hours, her coffee growing cold, her heart pounding with every passing minute. She imagined Nathan Googling her name, discovering the Forbes articles, the TED Talks, the empire she'd built. Would he see a powerful woman or a fraud? As the clock ticked past midnight, her phone buzzed, not from Nathan, but an unknown number. It was Mia somehow. "Hi, Isabel. Dad doesn't let me use his phone, but I wanted to send this." Attached was a photo of a crayon drawing 3 stick figures sitting under a tree munching cookies. Scrawled at the bottom in childish handwriting, "Dad, me, Cookie Lady." And below that, "I want this forever." Isabel's vision blurred with tears. The innocence of it, the unfiltered hope, cut deeper than any accusation could. She saved the image, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The next day, she couldn't wait any longer. Dressed in jeans and a plain sweater, no makeup or luxury accessories, she drove to Nathan's modest house in a quiet suburb outside the city. No chauffeur, no flashy car, just her raw and exposed. She knocked, her hand trembling. Nathan opened the door, his expression unreadable. Mia wasn't home, probably at a friend's, she guessed. The silence stretched for 10 agonizing seconds. "Nathan," she started, her voice breaking the quiet. "I know I was wrong. Not because of the money, but because I didn't trust you to love me if you knew the truth." He stepped aside, letting her in, but his posture was guarded. They stood in the living room, surrounded by Mia's toys and family photos on the walls, reminders of the life she'd infiltrated under false pretenses. "You think I cared? If you were poor?" Nathan asked, his voice low and edged with hurt. He clenched his fists slightly, not in anger, but restraint. "That's not what stings, Isabel. It's that you didn't think I had enough faith in you to understand who you really are." She swallowed, hard tears welling up. "I'm sorry, I was scared. Every relationship I've had, they changed when they knew about the company, the money. I thought if I tested you—" "A test," he interrupted, his eyes flashing. "You turned us into an experiment. I trusted you with Mia. I haven't done that with anyone since her mom died." The words landed like blows. Isabel felt the air leave her lungs. "I know. And that's why it hurts so much now. Please, Nathan." He shook his head. "I don't know if I can trust again. Not after this." She didn't argue. Instead, she turned and left, but she didn't go far. She sat on the front steps of his house, the cold seeping through her clothes as night fell. Hours passed. The streetlights flickered on neighbors' windows, glowed with warmth. She hugged her knees, replaying every moment, the coffee shop, the park Mia's drawing. This was her penance, facing the chill of what she'd done. As dawn broke, the door creaked open behind her. Nathan stood there holding 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to her without a word, sitting beside her on the step. The steam rose in the crisp morning air. "I read our old messages last night," he said, finally, his voice softer. Every line felt real. The laughs, the stories, they weren't fake. Isabel cupped the mug, warming her hands. They weren't, only the details were. He nodded slowly. "Don't say anything more, show me instead." That afternoon, Mia burst through the door, backpack slung over her shoulder. She froze at the sight of Isabel, wiping down the living room windows, a mundane task she'd offered to do while waiting. "Isabel." Mia ran over, wrapping her arms around Isabel's waist in a tight hug. "Are you mad at me because I told Dad to marry the cookie lady?" Isabel laughed through fresh tears, kneeling to hug her back. It felt like embracing the most fragile part of herself, the part that craved belonging. "No, sweetie, I'm not mad at all." Nathan watched from the doorway, his expression softening. As Mia chattered about her day, he reached out and squeezed Isabel's hand briefly, a silent signal that forgiveness was beginning one small step at a time. 2 weeks after Mia's unexpected hug, Isabel's face vanished from the glossy pages of tech magazines. No more boardroom battles, no keynote speeches at innovation summits, no frantic emails from investors. Instead, she stood in Nathan's cramped kitchen floor, dusting her sleeves as she shaped cookie dough with Mia. The oven was an ancient model, its dials worn from years of use, far from the smart appliances in her old life. Mia giggled as dough splattered the counter, her small hands pressing chocolate chips into place. "Careful, or we'll have more on the floor than in the oven," Nathan said from the doorway, leaning against the frame with a half smile. Isabel wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of flour. "This is harder than negotiating a merger. No AI to fix my mistakes." Nathan chuckled. "A CEO using a relic like this? Revolutionary." Mia looked up wide-eyed. "You're better than a robot cooker anyway. Robots don't laugh when stuff goes wrong." The words warmed Isabel more than the oven's heat. As the cookies baked, filling the house with a sweet aroma, she felt a peace she'd chased for years but never caught. That evening, with Mia tucked in bed, they sat on the back porch, wrapped in blankets against the chill. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, settling on the railing. Isabel pulled an envelope from her pocket and handed it to Nathan. "This is my resignation from Carson AI," she said quietly. "The board wants to buy out my shares. It's enough to retire on for generations." Nathan opened it, scanning the document. His brow furrowed. "Are you sure this is everything you've built?" She nodded, gazing at the falling snow. "I'm sure. I don't need to run the world anymore. I just want to manage my time and spend it on what's real." He set the envelope aside, his hand finding hers. "Real like us. Exactly like us." A week later, Mia skipped home from school with a tin of cookies clutched in her arms. "I shared them at show and tell," she announced proudly. Inside the tin was a folded note, her handwriting careful and deliberate. Nathan unfolded it during the parent-teacher conference that evening, the teacher reading it aloud to the small group. "If I could pick a second mom," it said, "I'd choose someone who makes cookies, wipes away tears, and stays when everyone else leaves." The room fell silent, a few parents dabbing at their eyes. Nathan reached for Isabel's hand under the table, squeezing it tightly. No words were needed. The gesture spoke of forgiveness fully given, of a future unfolding. In the end, there was no lavish wedding, no diamond ring flashed on social media, no headlines about the tech mogul's fairy tale romance. Just the three of them on the old porch, one snowy evening, mugs of hot chocolate steaming in their hands. Mia sat between them, her head on Isabel's shoulder, watching the flakes accumulate on the lawn. "Isabel," Mia asked softly. "Yes, sweetie. Can I call you Mom Isabel if you want?" Isabel's breath caught. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she pulled Mia closer. "If that's what you want, then I'll learn to be a mom from you." Mia beamed, snuggling in. Nathan wrapped an arm around them both, the quiet settling like the snow. It wasn't a grand happily ever after, but something truer, the knowledge that love didn't require perfection. It just needed the courage to stay even, when leaving seemed easier. And in that staying, they found everything they needed.